homes for, not Davenport. I think he should be absolved from all the, because his family sees a lot of that stuff too, like the hate that goes his way for no apparent reason. But what'd you guys make of just him going down and kind of the Lions, I guess, where they kind of pivot from here? And then AQM stepping in potentially to that role for this Monday Night Football.
Fans needed something to complain about now that Broderick Martin's no longer here, I guess.
That's true.
I think that the concern was laid out all offseason, that you were counting or banking on a guy that has durability concerns. I don't think they went in blind to that. I think there's a reason they brought back Muhammad. I'm going to keep throwing these numbers out there in written word in this podcast, in everywhere I can. But if you extrapolate his pressure rate over a larger sample size last year, he only rushed about 200 times. But if you extrapolate it out to a full workload, it was not far off from Zadarius Smith's. It wasn't. And I know you can't guarantee that's what's going to happen with a bigger workload, but it's not like he was playing 10, 15 snaps. It was these full workloads. It was just a shorter span of the season. And when he gets opportunity, he's answering the bell. And so Muhammad is a really, really great piece for them. And they have other guys on the roster with flexibility. Obviously, Josh Paschal is down right now as well. I think that was an unexpected thing since he got hurt between free agency and the start of training camp. You've got Pat O'Connor that can do some of the inside-out stuff and crush the pocket the way they like. And so they do have guys. I don't think Dan Campbell is needling people when he says we're good. It's a coach backing the guys and expressing confidence and belief on the guys in his roster, as opposed to throwing them under the bus. Like, there's a reason these guys are here. And would they be better off if they had one more edge rusher? Yeah. So would the other 31 teams. Like, it's a tough position to find talent, and you could only spend so much on what amounts to insurance. And so Muhammad at the end of the season might end up being one of the biggest values in the NFL.
Yeah, hey, you tell Cash Doll that he's not needling people. You let her know that.
Apparently, I just did.
I'll just say briefly on Davenport, in his defense, he really did make over his offseason regimen this year in terms of the way he prepared his body for the season. He got with Jill Costanza, who is the Lions director of athletic training. And, they came up with an entirely new workout plan that was focused on fluidity, and they used more free weights. He felt much more stable in his core entering this season. He hired a new chef in the offseason. He was as healthy, maybe healthier than he's ever felt entering this year. And look, the reality is he gets hurt once again in his second game. But just to be clear, it wasn't a lack of preparation on his end. He really felt like he had put himself in the perfect spot this year to be available. And the injury on Sunday might just speak to the fact that, look, he's injury prone. Like there's no other way to say that. You hope that this isn't long term, but if it is, Al-Quadin Muhammad does look like a piece that could spark this pass rush. And I was really surprised in that Packers game that he played so sparingly. And I even asked him about that last week, and he said the same thing. He was like, yeah, I was surprised. Only 7 snaps, only 4 pass rushing snaps. But he said it wasn't something that frustrated me. I trust the coaches. I trust their plan. It wasn't anything that I did wrong. And he felt like he was going to get his chance in week 2. And he did. And he made the most of it. I mean, look at his sack on Braxton Jones, and say what you want about Braxton Jones, but when Dan Campbell talks about Muhammad playing with power first, that's what he's talking about. Like, Muhammad just put his head into Braxton Jones' chest, drove him backward, shed him at the last minute, and got home for the sack. And he might have something against Braxton Jones, because he also killed him last year at Ford Field on Thanksgiving when he just barreled over him and dropped him into the turf. And to go
looked
back,
like he was shot on that play.
Yeah. To go back to the sack on Sunday, the Bears basically had 2 linemen between Jonah Jackson and Darnell Wright, and a receiver who were focused on stopping Hutch on the other side. And as Dan Campbell says again and again and again, in cases like that, someone has to win their one-on-one. Well, Muhammad got his one-on-one. and won it cleanly. And like, it wasn't a perfect game for him. I think he still has some work to do in the run game. At one point, he got sealed off pretty cleanly by Luther Burden on a design run for Caleb Williams down in the red zone, where he just couldn't get off that block. But as a pass rusher, the numbers are pretty tantalizing through 2 games, and that bears repeating, through 2 games. But if you look at his pass rush win rate, he's right now among the top 10 defensive ends. In fact, he's 6th, 28%, smack dab between a couple of guys you might have heard of, Trey Hendrickson and Micah Parsons. Now, there's context to those numbers. He's not seeing near the amount of double teams those guys are. He's getting much more favorable matchups. But it's just worth pointing out, to echo what Justin said, he does have a knack for making the most of his opportunities. And Dan Campbell loves this guy, dude. Like, going back to their time in New Orleans when Dan Campbell was the tight ends coach and Muhammad was a rookie defensive end. Muhammad tells a story. There was one practice that year where Campbell, kind of being the psycho that he is, would always have his tight ends take one-on-one reps against defensive ends. And he just remembers back then Muhammad being a bull, like being a terror to deal with in those reps in practice. And he told them way back then, you keep practicing like this, you're going to be a player one day. And it feels like they were kind of destined to reunite all these years later. When Campbell talks about Muhammad, the appreciation for his motor and how tirelessly he plays is real. And when Campbell sees in players this devotion to their teammates, he's going to get them on the field. And I think the more and more we see him win those one-on-one reps, the more he's going to get chances on Sundays.
Yeah. I go back to Davenport real quick. I go back to when he re-signed with the team in March and, spoke to some of us in Allen Park. He looked like a guy that kind of knew he's running out of opportunities in this league, and a guy that knows, like, hey, teams aren't going to be able to trust me because my body's breaking down, and that sucks. There's nothing I can really do about that. A lot of it is just circumstance. And, to see him leave that game twice, one with an ankle injury, another with a shoulder injury, and he had a large ice pack wrapped around that shoulder in the locker room after the game, you kind of felt for him. And you're asking him, hey, man, how you feeling? And he's just kind of like, I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
And that looked like a dude that's really going through it. And so I think about that first and foremost. I think about, the messages that he gets on social media, that his family sees, that he sees, and that's something he's talked about before. It's hard not to see all that stuff when that's all people are saying about you. But that is sort of the reality of the job. Like, the best ability is availability. And he just has not been available that often to teams in his NFL career. And I think that's sort of why, we have this discussion every year that you decide to bring him back. And it's like when the Lions were re-signing Emmanuel Mosley, he gets hurt again. It's like some guys just have this luck that, like, you can't really count on them to stay on the field. And it's unfortunate, but it seems like he's one of those players you can fit in that description. And so when you hear Brad Holmes say, we'd love to get multiple edge rushers, 2 or 3, or, bring in multiple guys in here. And he said that at the combine in February. And then to not really do that, I think your words say one thing, your actions say another. And I really like Al-Quadin Muhammad as a piece, but I understand, like, hey, you're counting on Davenport to play a lot for you. And if he can't play a lot and you're focusing on Al-Quadin Muhammad to step up, he can do that. I don't know how much you want him to play. I wonder if that, like, reduces his effectiveness, because I think he's perfect in this, like, number 3 role right now. Yeah. But if he's forced to play more long-term, I think that's maybe where you can run into some issues. And that's sort of the risk you play when you kind of run it this way and, create your roster this way. So that's the only thing I say. It's nothing new. It's something that we've all talked about before, but I certainly feel for him, Marcus Davenport, and, hopefully it's nothing too major, too lingering where he has to miss multiple games.
I wonder, just real quick, I wonder if Brad Holmes viewed the trade deadline as the potential safety net for a Marcus Davenport injury, knowing that if that were to happen, they could swing a similar move that they did last year and bringing in the proven number 2, who ended up having to be the number 1 with Hutchdown also, into Darius Smith. And the trade deadline will come up pretty quickly here, and we'll get more light on Davenport's injury soon. But there is the possibility that they felt comfortable entering the year with Davenport, knowing that if an injury arose, they'd have a chance later in the year to address that need. And, he didn't shy away from making a move last year. And he might pull off something similar this year if they need to.
I'd be surprised, honestly, if that was his approach. Just if you remember, he said Davenport was the toughest negotiation deal he ever had to do, and it was frustrating and went down to the deadline. I'd be surprised if Brad is banking on that possibility. I do think it's worth mentioning, and Joseph brought it up in the chat, like Davenport's contract is structured in a way that the Lions were braced for this, and very little guarantees. Most of it is baked into playing time, per game bonuses. And so, if he doesn't play, they don't have to pay him, at least, I guess, in some ways. That's a good thing. And then, Jeff, I really need you to clip out where Will compared Muhammad to Micah Parsons and just take out all the other context and then send it in the group chat to Jared Goff.